Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over all the games in Week 17 of the NFL season, starting with Thursday Night Football, ending with the Monday Night game. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your NFL picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bet, you can always find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games in Week 17 of the NFL season. First up, it's Thursday Night Football between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tennessee Titans. Cowboys 10-point favorites. Total is at 40.5. Now, we've seen the last few weeks the Cowboys defense has struggled, and they've played in a lot of shootout games against both the Jaguars and the Eagles. The game against Jacksonville was a 40-34 loss, and last week a 40-34 win over the Eagles. But the defense has not been getting a lot of pressure on opposing QBs. That is pretty concerning. And this was a Cowboys pass rush at the beginning of the season, one of the best in the NFL. But you look at the last three games, only one sack combined in those three. But now you play a Tennessee Titans offense and an offensive line that has really struggled this season. I know Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback here, and he is a little bit more mobile, so he can get out of the pocket more so than Ryan Tannehill can. But still, this Titans offensive line the last 4 weeks, 4 sacks, and then 6 against the Eagles. They're just not playing well at all, and I think the Cowboys' defense is a much sharper performance in this game. But you look on the other side for Tennessee, their defense has actually stepped it up quite a bit as of late. They've been good against the run basically all season, holding opponents to 3.5 yards per carry and 80 yards rushing per game. The secondary has not been the sharpest at all times this year, but still, the defense has stepped it up while the offense has struggled. I think we see a low-scoring game in this game compared to what we saw in the last few weeks for the Cowboys. So give me the under here in primetime between the Cowboys and Titans. Next up, it's the Indianapolis Colts taking on the New York Giants. The Giants are 5.5-point favorites. Total is at 39 points. The Giants can win and get in the playoffs. A win here clinches a spot in the NFC playoffs, and the Indianapolis Colts are just not good enough for me to want to take a chance with the underdog here. You look at the Colts last week, 7 sacks allowed, 173 total yards in that game, only 3 points of offense. There's just no way I can take them on the road against a team that can clinch a spot in the playoffs. And the Giants lost that one-score game last week against the Vikings, and we know the Giants down the stretch this season haven't been the greatest. We know they were much better at the beginning of the season where they started 6-1. They were pulling off big-time upsets. Lately, haven't been as good. They do have that nice win over the Commanders a couple weeks ago, but I still think the Giants' defense is good enough here. I think the offense also, last week, even though they lost that game to the Vikings, they outgained the Vikings 445 to 353. So really impressive there. I know the Vikings' defense has struggled, but to put up 400-plus yards against any team, especially a playoff team like the Vikings, it's very impressive for me. I think the Giants win this game by a touchdown at least. So give me the New York Giants here laying the points. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals take it on the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are 3.5-point favorites. Total is at 41. I'm going to lean here with Atlanta in this game. Not my favorite game on the board. We're going to see down the stretch these last 2 weeks some games that really don't have much meaning just in terms of the playoff races in the NFC and AFC, and this is certainly one of them. The Atlanta Falcons and Arizona Cardinals both eliminated from playoff contention. But the Atlanta Falcons, I would say their defense has improved down the stretch this season. The beginning of the year, it played well. In the middle of the season, it struggled. But now you look at the last few weeks, their defense has stepped it up. Not getting a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, but pretty good against the run. The secondary has played well. You're facing a very weak offense in the Arizona Cardinals that's battled injuries from start to finish of the season. The Cardinals defense, nothing to write home about. So give me Atlanta here and a lean Atlanta points. Next up, we see the Carolina Panthers taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Panthers are 3-point dogs. Total is at 39. This is a big game for the NFC South divisional race. The winner of this one takes over first place, or it takes over really the driver's seat in the division, as the Bucs currently are in first at 7-8. The Panthers 6-9, but the Panthers with the win here would take over because of the tiebreaker in the divisional records. Both teams right now are 3-1. A Panthers win would move them to 4-1, and the Bucs would be 3-2. So, this is a huge game, and I got to say the Panthers are in much better form right now. They're 3-1 in their last 4 games. They're putting up a ton of points and a ton of yards as well. Offensively, last week, 7.4 yards per carry on the ground, 320 rushing yards as a team, 570 total yards of offense. I know it was against the Lions. It was a home game for Carolina, but putting up almost 600 total yards against any NFL team, very, very impressive. The defense has played pretty well. And you look on the other side, you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, really disappointing season for them. A lot of injuries on offense, but still, the team, when you got Tom Brady, you got so many weapons in the receiving game, there's really no excuses. And you look at their last game against the Cardinals, yes, they won that game by 3 points, but They were 8-point favorites on the road because of the Cardinals' injuries and the underperformances from Arizona this season to only beat Arizona by 3 points. And not a very convincing game. It was, a late game that was tied late. I just not liking what I'm seeing from the Buccaneers at all. I think a lot of people would agree with that as well. So, you're going to give me 3 points with a team that's in much better form. I'm going to take them. Give me the Carolina Panthers plus the 3 in this one. Next up, it's the Cleveland Browns taking on the Washington Commanders. This one, the Commanders are laying 2 points. Total is at 40.5. Now, obviously, the Commanders need this game to really keep their playoff hopes alive, and just because they need it doesn't mean they're going to get it. The Browns are not going to just lay down and die, even though they are eliminated from playoff contention, but even still, I do like this matchup statistically for the Commanders, and I am going to take them and lay the points in this game. You look at Washington, even though last week a disappointing result, losing by 17 to the Niners, giving up those 37 points, I still think there's some positives to take out of it, at least on the offensive side. You put up 20 points against a very good defense, probably the best defense in the NFL, and you put up 349 total yards, which was the second most yards any team has earned against San Francisco this year. The number one was the Kansas City Chiefs. So, you could take some positives out of that. Your offense played pretty well, the passing game especially, and now you play a Browns team that has struggled more so on the offensive side of things. Deshaun Watson has not done very well at all in his first few games with the Browns, and the run game has also struggled. The offensive line has not been great, and I just don't think Cleveland scores enough in this game to stay competitive in it. I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to see about 10 to 17 points scored, and I don't think it's enough in this type of matchup against a pretty fired up and must-win desperation mode team. So give me the Washington Commanders here, laying the points. Next up, it's the New Orleans Saints taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are laying 7 points. Total is at 44. It's still unclear who the quarterback's going to be for the Eagles in this game, but they're big favorites, and I think for good reason. I still like the Eagles, even with Gardner Minshew laying the touchdown in this one. The Saints' offense just not good enough. You look at the last, even though they've won some games lately, they've won back-to-back games, they're still not really moving the ball much, and their offenses overall in the last 7 matchups only put up over 300 total yards in 2 of those games. That's just not going to get it done, especially on the road and against a very good team like the Eagles. And even without Jalen Hurts last week, the offense was fine for Philadelphia. They put up 442 total yards against a good Cowboys defense, 34 points. Gardner Minshew had a solid day just in terms of passing yards, and the offensive line held up well. I think we see a double-digit win here for the Eagles, so I'm going to lay the points here with Philadelphia at home. Next up, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Houston Texans in the AFC South. The Jaguars are 4.5-point favorites on the road. Total is at 43.5. Now, the Houston Texans have been ATS darlings lately. They're covering numbers left and right in their last 3 games, covering the spread against the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Titans, all as underdogs. And here they are yet again as an underdog in this matchup. But I do think the Jaguars catch a win and a cover in this game, even despite covering these numbers against these solid teams. And the Chiefs, Cowboys, even the Titans have been pretty good at times this season. The Texans' offense is still not doing much. The last 6 games, they've only put up over 300 yards in one of those games, and that was only 327 against the Cowboys. The offensive line has done better, I will say. It's given them a lot more time in the passing game, but the run game has struggled. I don't think they're going to do much offensively in this one, and the Jaguars' offense is in good form. I think they put up plenty of points in this game, enough to cover the number even on the road. So give me the Jacksonville Jaguars to end that 3-game cover streak for the Texans. Next up, it's an NFC North battle between the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. We're going to see the Lions as 6-point favorites. Total is at 52, so a very steep total in this matchup. I think for good reason. I'm going to take the over in this game. As we saw at the beginning of the season, or a little bit more towards the middle, a game between these two teams ended 31-30 final score in the Lions' favor, so 61 total points in that game. And that was a road game for the Lions, and we know Jared Goff and his home and road splits are pretty drastic. He plays much, much better at Ford Field at home. So, even though the Lions put up 31 points in that game, I expect the offense to have a very good showing in this one as well against the Bears defense that has really struggled, especially after the trade deadline where they moved a lot of their bigger name pieces on defense. And, in this spot, the Chicago offense, I think, is going to benefit from playing a very weak Detroit Lions defense. We saw last week against the Carolina Panthers, of all teams, the Lions gave up 570 total yards, 320 rushing yards in that game, 7.4 yards per carry. It was probably the worst defensive showing of the season for the Lions. So, even though maybe the value might not be there with this over because the total is set so high already, I still think we see a very high-scoring shootout type performance. So give me the over in this Bears-Lions game. Next up, we see the Miami Dolphins taking on the New England Patriots. Right now, the Patriots are 2.5-point favorites. Total is at 42, so we're waiting to see the news with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback for the Dolphins. He may not be available for this game, and that's why the line's kind of gone all over the place. Based on where the number is right now and the Patriots being favored, I would expect that Tua will be unavailable for this matchup, and I still think the Dolphins, with or without Tua, have a good shot at winning this game. And I'm not giving up on this Dolphins team. It's played very well for most of the season. It's gone on a 4-game losing streak, but they've had a really tough schedule. 3 straight road games against the Niners, Chargers, and Bills. Very, very good teams there. And then you play on Christmas Day against the Packers. Your offense outgains the opposition, 376 to 301, but some big-time mistakes by Tua late in that game, especially the interception on the final drive. That really hurt your chances there, and whether Tua should have been in that game is a different story, but I still think this Dolphins team has shown and proven enough. I mean, you look at their performances at the beginning of the season, wins over the Ravens, that comeback victory, the win over the Bills at the beginning of the year, even beating these New England Patriots in week 1 of the season, 20-7. Now, it's a different team from week 1, 2, and 3. A lot of injuries have been along the way, but I still have not been impressed with the Patriots enough to take a chance with them in this spot. We saw last week, even though the Patriots had a chance to win that game against Cincinnati, they fumbled at the 5-yard line to lose the game. But you look at the yardage, they really shouldn't have had a chance. It was because of the turnovers that Cincinnati had. You look at New England, gave up 442 total yards to Cincinnati, 369 passing yards. The secondary has not played very well lately, and the offense continues to struggle. They had under 300 total yards again. The offensive line's not playing well. They're not running the football very well. So I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins here with or without Tua. Right now we're getting 2.5 points, so give me the Dolphins here plus the 2.5. Next up, it's the Denver Broncos taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 13.5-point favorites. Total is at 45. We saw a pretty high-scoring game between these two teams a couple of weeks ago, 34-28 final. I'm going to take the over again in this matchup. I think the Chiefs can score 30-plus points yet again in this game. We'd only need a couple touchdowns for the Broncos, and even though it's not easy to do with this Broncos offense most weeks, I do think, especially if the Chiefs take a big lead early, that their foot might go off the pedal a little bit, just like it did in that matchup defensively. We've seen them give up a good amount of points to even some weaker teams, like the Texans giving up 24 points to them, 28 to these Broncos. So I could see, a 34-14 type of game, final score somewhere in that range, getting us over this total. So give me the over in this Chiefs-Broncos game. But in terms of against the spread, I'd lean towards the Chiefs, but not rushing to the window. Next up, it's the New York Jets taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Jets are 2-point favorites. Total is at 42.5. We see two teams that had really good starts to the season but have fallen off ever since. The Jets are now on a 4-game losing streak. They've lost 5 of their last 6. The Seahawks have lost 3 straight. They've lost 5 of their last 6, but in these types of matchups, I usually lean towards the team with the better defense, and that's where I'm headed right now with the New York Jets laying the points here on the road. You look at the Seahawks, a common opinion for people with the Seahawks is they play much, much better at home in front of the 12th man, and while that may be true for recent seasons, this year it just hasn't really been the case just in terms of the total yards for and total yards against. You look at total yards for at home, 308, on the road 395, so almost 90 yards better away from home. And even on the road, or even in terms of defense, where they're giving up fewer points at home, the yardage has not been that way. 383 allowed per game at home, 363, so 20 yards less per game allowed on the road. So, the Seahawks have just not been playing very well at home this season, and I do think they're going to earn another loss in this game. One of these teams are going to break their losing streaks. I think the Jets have the better chance of doing so with that very good defense. So give me the Jets here, laying the points. Next up, it's the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. The Niners are 6-point favorites. Total is at 45. You look at the Las Vegas Raiders defensively, hasn't been a very good season for Las Vegas. At home, they're giving up 24 points per game and 373 total yards per game, which is a little bit steeper than their numbers away from home, surprisingly. They're giving up 5.0 yards per carry on the ground, 2 opposing ground games when they're playing at Allegiant Stadium. And the Niners offense, it's been red hot ever since Brock Purdy took over as quarterback when Jimmy G went down. The offense has been just fine, and they're putting up plenty of points. Just last week, 37 points against a pretty good Commanders defense. And I'm going to take the team total over. It's pretty low here in this game for the Niners at 25.5, in my opinion. I'm going to take the over. I think we see at least 27 points here for San Francisco. I think their offense continues to roll, and I think their defense is also their best offense, setting up the Niners' offense in good field position opportunities. So give me San Francisco team total over. Next up, it's an NFC North battle between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Packers are 3.5-point favorites. Total is at 48.5. You know, the Minnesota Vikings, I still think, are one of the luckier teams in the NFL. They've won a lot of one-score games. They've benefited from a lot of late-game heroics by Kirk Cousins, but their defense has not been very good this season, giving up over 400 total yards per game, 25 points per game as well. And on the road against the Packers in a revenge spot after the beginning of the season when the Vikings really blew out the Packers 23-7 in a must-win game here for Green Bay. And the Packers are on a 3-game win streak and in pretty good form, probably playing the best football they have all season. I like the Packers to continue to roll and earn a win and cover in this game. I like what I've seen from both sides of the ball, especially defensively for Green Bay as of late. They're forcing some turnovers. The secondary has played very well. So give me the Green Bay Packers here, laying the points in what should be a pretty good game. Next up, it's the LA Rams taking on the LA Chargers. This one's going to be the Chargers laying 6.5 points. Total is at 41. We saw the Rams last week put up 51 points against the Broncos in a 51-14 win, but the offense wasn't as good as what that 51 points may suggest. You know, only 388 total yards. The offense really benefited from the defense forcing turnovers and giving them a lot of good field position opportunities. The Rams were +4 in the turnover differential in that game, but against the Chargers here, a much better defensive team, in my opinion, at least down the stretch this season. I do think the Rams offense is going to struggle. We've seen the last 3 weeks, the Chargers defense giving up 219 total yards, 284, and then 173 last week, primetime game against the Colts. 7 sacks earned by that Chargers defense. It's starting to get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Starting to look like that defense we thought it could be at the beginning of the season. We saw these big names on paper that the Chargers were able to acquire in the offseason. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game overall. Give me the under in the Chargers-Rams. In our next game, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. It's going to be the Ravens laying 3 points. Total is at 36, so another low total for a Ravens game. I think for good reason. You know, the Ravens defense has been outstanding this year. It was slow at the beginning of the season, but I think a lot of that was because of the injuries they had, both in the secondary and on the defensive line. And, you know, they gave up a good amount of points and yards to the Dolphins and the Patriots, but they got healthy, and now they're playing very well defensively overall this season, giving up only 18 points per game. You're facing a very young and inexperienced offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers with Kenny Pickett at quarterback, and he's had his moments. There's no doubt about that. And we've seen the Steelers have won some games lately. They're actually 4-1 in their last 5. But I don't trust this offense to do too much here. Very tough matchup against the Ravens defense. And on the other side, we don't know who's going to be available for the Ravens offensively. We're still wondering, you know, still going to have to wait and see if Lamar Jackson's going to be able to play in this game for Baltimore. Still questionable right now for the Ravens quarterback situation. So if Lamar does play, we're going to see this total rise quite a bit. We're also going to see the Ravens become a little bit bigger favorites as well. Right now, I'm leaning towards the under in this primetime game. Next up, the final game for Week 17. It's your Monday Night Football contest between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. We see the Bills right now as a 1-point favorite on the road. Total is at 49.5, so a pretty steep total, a lot higher than what we're used to seeing in these primetime games. And I'm going to take the over in this one to end the week. You know, the Buffalo Bills, this is an offense that's been able to score points and move the ball against most teams in the league. And the same thing goes for the Cincinnati Bengals, especially when they're playing at home. You look at the numbers for the Bengals at home this season, 29 points per game, 433 total yards per game. Their offense has been tough to beat. No, even though their defense has also been very good at home, I still think the Bills do enough here to keep this game close. I think it's going to be a great game to watch, high-scoring shootout. I do think the Bills win this game in the end, but give me the over in this Bills-Bengals game to end the week. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 17 of the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your NFL picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.